Yeah, I think there was a late realization that each project, anyway, always has to alter, I believe, because a one size doesn't fit all, but the outcomes have been really special. Actually, I felt like I shared a bit of myself throughout the project, and there was a huge sense of camaraderie. You know, if you work on a large scale, you can bring in other tools and mediums such as spray paint, or I actually use a fire extinguisher that I've converted into filling up with acrylic paint, pressurizing it, and you shoot out paint. When you include auxiliary staff and cleaning staff, and as well as directors and clinicians and therapists, it just adds to an environment that breaks down authority. So dismantling that authority, it tends to have really good effect. As the program was shifting into working in the studio, and we were working on canvases and in our books, and the program was a 10-week program, I started noticing that people weren't who wanted to come or who had already come weren't able to maintain their commitment. I felt it was so important to keep a space for them. This is exactly why this work needs to happen, because people can't come because they're often sort of pulled into other directions, or that they put other people's well-being and their work commitments ahead of their own. So these canvases are remain blank for those that weren't able to carry on attending our sessions. A session was starting at an hour, and that grew into 2 hours. I held the space for 2 hours. You can always feel like an energy, like an authenticity in the air, which is, for me, incredibly important. So today, watching the performance today, I thought it was such an encouraging feeling that sort of washed over me. There was a moment where I sort of went, I took like a massive sigh, because I've long believed that there needs to be support for staff as well. Because staff tend to be stoic, strong, committed, loyal, heartbroken, damaged, vulnerable, honest, radical, innovative individuals. I'm speechless. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I felt scared for the patients. I felt like I could do something to help kind of make people less scared. I guess that's where I kind of saw myself fitting into it a bit, is I can just give some certainty that there's someone here. It did feel very like separate from the rest of the world because I work on the wards. I think having more reflective practices in the trust, I would love to be a part of it myself. I think because I switched jobs in January, it was kind of not a great time for me to ask to start. I would love to be a part of it in the future, and to, yeah, I guess just to have a more creative part of work. I just feel this real sense of community that you don't always feel when you're just working day to day.
Compassion is my language. Pleasure is my gift. Community is my power.
So I would say that definitely it's my passion. It has not been that easy, given the pressure in the system, and given that during the COVID itself, I was actually working as a frontline nurse, and I was actually an acting manager in a COVID ward, in Sunflower ward. So we do have the pressure during the COVID, the pressure and the fear and the anxiety. I would say it's definitely the managing director. We have a great managing director in Haringey, Gary Passaway. I was actually infected. So I had a COVID and I was sick for 7 weeks. I was a survivor of COVID. So I was actually, like as I said, I was the frontline staff. So I got COVID. So one of our doctor came back from Italy. Then all of us got it on the ward. I was very unlucky because I was sick for 7 weeks. I actually didn't know that I would survive. So the ambulance came to my house. I was in A&E four times. I was struggling with breathing problem. But when I came back, I didn't actually give up. So I survived after 7 weeks and I came back and I actually went straight into the COVID ward because then I feel like someone has to do the job. It's frustrating sometimes we don't really get all that support and resources that we think that we needed. But sometimes it goes down to the resources. First of all, I would say the support that I'm getting from them is great. I would say that's number one. I would say that to continue to get that support, continue to feel supportive, feel that there is someone there to listen to you, and which I am getting that at the moment. I think just for someone to continue to listen. I think it's a great stuff. I was actually not happy that I missed most part of it because I was busy dealing with a patient that I wanted to go home today. But I said that it's something that we need more of this.
So when COVID first hit, I was managing a day programme for people recovering from eating disorders, which was predominantly a group programme. And given the nature of being in a group and then us having to move to essentially online telephone support to people as individuals rather than working as a group programme, which was something that we weren't prepared for, we weren't skilled, we hadn't sort of built up our skills to be able to work in that way. And it also wasn't what the service users had signed up for in terms of their recovery and treatment programme. So it was incredibly challenging. We obviously were all working at home, we didn't have NHS equipment, so we were all working on our personal devices, and because so much was happening in the service, it was very difficult. We were sort of still building up the networks of between staff support as well. So I was busy trying to support the team and obviously manage my own emotional well-being at that time. For some of my colleagues, it was really challenging. We wanted to be as useful as possible within this emergency. And so some of us felt, oh my gosh, I need to be at Nightingale, I want to get right into the thick of it. And actually it turns that we needed to make sure that the service that we were running stayed and was delivering service consistently, and that was such an important role to have. So we were offering a lot of emotional support with one another, and we were very quickly having to find ways. There were times when we really felt we were really struggling to sort of keep our own emotional well-being so that we could be there for others. What has been something really positive about the role that I've been in is that I've been afforded the opportunity and the support to work with people like Martin and John to deliver projects like this Open Minds, which has brought staff and service users together as we've come out of the pandemic to be creative, to work together, to express themselves through what they've been through. And just to say, there is so much that we can do building in culture of well-being, whether that's starting a meeting with mindfulness, building in staff walks at lunchtime or during a well-being session once a week. At the moment, it maybe feels like an additional luxury that you maybe kind of can find the time to do for some people, and for other people, actually the pressures of their work meant that they couldn't get involved. But it's also then having additional programs such as the Open Minds, where people can come together, and it is about learning new skills and expressing yourself, getting in touch with your different parts of yourself and being more open at work about how you are experiencing things. I think one of the biggest challenges is that people go very quiet when they're struggling, and certainly during the pandemic there was points at which you go, at what point am I really not coping? And I had to ask myself that quite a lot, because at times it really felt like I wasn't coping. But knowing that there's a lot of people in the system who are also potentially not coping, and so you sort of have to find ways to keep going because the system can't afford for us to dip out. I just think the energy in the room, like you can feel it, and everybody's saying, oh, that's really good, and wow, everyone's so brave to get up and share their, and hear a different part of our colleagues and see their artwork, and to see them sort of doing the dance and movement, and you see something else. and seeing colleagues that you don't otherwise get to see in our normal work. I've had a lot of conversations with people saying, what next? We want more. Coming to something like this, then you start to see the value of it, you start to feel the value of it. It's not just a theoretical thing. You think, oh yeah, actually I should make the time and work for that because I can see the benefits of what that would do. It raises my energy, it makes me feel good, I learn a new skill, I build confidence, and that sort of thing can ripple effect into the rest of our work as well. But certainly to come together in a way like this and actually have some fun, have a laugh, see each other in the different ways, have a creative outlet, I think is incredibly positive for general atmosphere and feeling part of a community and a belonging in hospital here.
My own experiences really have been by working with colleagues. I think during certainly the nadir of the pandemic, what taught me, one of the lessons that I learned from it all was that you can only do things if you work together. You can't do it in isolation. And I think from my own experiences, it was reaching out and finding the time to ensure that we could have meaningful conversations. In terms of my own outside of work interests, I found solace in running, actually, in terms of managing the stress that came with the role and the job. But for me, it was quality time with colleagues, really, and checking in with them, and hopefully they felt the same. It was incredibly tough for all. Yeah, I mean, the first thing is just the recognition, that it's so important. It's valued. Everybody works incredibly hard, day in, day out. The pressures just don't go away. They build. Everybody wants a piece of you. And I think we just need to knit it into what we do day in and day out, that we have a well-being offer, whether that's time set aside, whether it's supportive programs, whether it's proper supervision in terms of one-to-one time. And also, quite often it's those small gestures that can really make a difference. Having a chat with a colleague, meeting up for a coffee. And obviously you've got the bigger programs as well. I think today has brought so many people together. And I've seen colleagues today that I thought, wow, look what you can do. Whether it's a musical instrument, whether it's some poetry. And actually everybody's enjoyed it. We've taken something out from it, and I can see people smiling and happy. And actually, it's events like today that make such a difference, And I think if we can permeate this type of offer into what we do as part of the job, I think staff will feel the benefit of that, actually. And I think it's really important we get behind projects such as Open Minds. Just in terms of today, I just think the creative process is just such a powerful way of an outlet, if you like, in terms of the recovery process. And I think that's not just for service users, quite often it's for staff as well.
When COVID first happened, I was working in an inpatient unit, and I was working as an assistant social worker, so I was the only social worker on site. So when COVID hit, it became really hard because of the restrictions, the social distancing, also that people from BAME communities were becoming unwell because more at risk of catching COVID, and then it affects us in a detrimental way more than our counterparts. I felt this obligation, as long as I could stay well and I could keep service users safe and I can stay safe, that I needed to go in. And I think that is what's mirrored by a lot of staff during COVID. They felt that working in NHS, they had to go in to support service users and their carers in the services that they were in. There were many challenges in regards to isolation, and if somebody did become positive, about how that was managed on the wards, the extra pressures on staffing, so there's always staff shortages. And at the time, we all just rolled up our sleeves and we got on with it. Reflecting back, I think then people realised the effect it took on them. So when I was going home, I was having to change all my clothing in the garden shed and then entering my home with different clothing. My daughter was pregnant at the time. She wanted to be with me during the pregnancy, even though I asked her to go back home, but she wouldn't, and so that was the added risk. Just that is my experience, but also I have siblings who are also working in the NHS, and they had similar, where they converted garages and all sorts of things to kind of separate from family. So it took a big toll on family life, and I think that's where you get your well-being from, is your family network, your friends network. And when you couldn't access those during COVID, I think that played an extra part in staff's well-being. Actually, staff well-being has been neglected for many, many, many years. And I think one of the things that I'm very lucky is that in my role now as a peer lived experience manager, I have declared lived experience. So when I take on a role, it's already expected that I concentrate on my well-being. I focus on having a well-being plan. I have things put in place for me to support my well-being at work, that they have those plans and have thought about their well-being prior to starting a role. And I think I want that to be a bigger conversation to the wider workforce. Really, really look at this staff shortage. Every time I hear about that there's not enough staff, but why isn't there enough staff? There are nurses being trained, there are social workers being trained. Why can't we recruit them into mental health services? So about really looking at how can we recruit other staff. So I know up north or outside London, a lot of services recruit nursing assistants and social worker assistants to work alongside a qualified person. Lots of people that be willing to do those roles. So maybe we just need to think a bit outside the box. I think these sessions have done in the music sessions I took part in is humanise my colleagues. So they weren't a psychiatrist, they weren't a psychologist, they weren't a social worker, they weren't a manager. We were a group of people that had human thoughts, human feelings, and we were sharing them with each other. Through a mutual activity, we actually got to share our thoughts and feelings and things. I've known people for about a year and a half now. I've worked in this trust, and there's lots of things I found out about people that I didn't know, and that felt like a real privilege. I hope moving forward, if this happens again, that managers get on board with staff taking time off for people to take part. It was absolutely amazing. I mean, I'm always in awe of people that get up in front of a group of strangers and actually sing. And my hope is that next time when other staff see me, that they see not just me, but the human side of me.
I think the most successful have been definitely programmes like this, getting staff together. What I've really liked about this one is that it involves staff and service users, which I think is quite rare. That's something that I don't think we've necessarily funded a lot of. So to have one that focuses on both, which are two very important groups, is really great. So I think stories are a great way to get across, what someone is feeling. And I think even talking to people at this project this evening and what this project's been able to do for people, actually sharing stories is what gets people want to be involved in projects like this. The more that we can get people to talk about what they've been going through, and mental health is really, really difficult and it's a tricky subject, and to get NHS staff to open up about it, even people in psychologist roles, I think that's amazing. And I think hopefully that will set an example for others to start joining programmes like this. Like, from what I've seen, it looks really, really great for staff to be able to mix with lots of different departments as well. I think, the NHS, all the staff are so busy all the time, to actually integrate with other departments as well and share, what your learnings and what's been going on in each department and roles is really, really important. I just think it's a really impactful, incredible event to actually see firsthand the difference that it's made to staff, and their well-being is incredible, and just being able to speak to those people and really understand just what it's done for them has been amazing, and all of them saying that they want to do more shows how important funding has been and how it's needed. So.